not admitted without parents or guardian.
Only a movie.
Good evening, fans of fantastic films. Welcome to the Drive-In Asylum Late Movie with me, Jennifer Upton, and Sam Panico. And we are just thrilled to be able to welcome one of the legendary figures of Maverick cinema, Fred Olen Ray. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I have a few questions, Fred. I know you have a new book coming out on the 25th of June.
Yep.
The ebook and the print copy are both dropping on the same day, right?
That's correct.
Great. So on this show tonight, we're doing a watch party for one of your earlier films called Biohazard. Mm-hmm. And I heard a rumor that there are some stories about Biohazard in the book.
Yes, that you're correct.
Yes.
You should know.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there because I love the stories you tell about Biohazard in this book. And Bill is a huge Aldo Ray fan. So I wonder if you could cherry pick a little bit of the information and just kind of give us a background of what led to the making of this film and how it happened and what was going on in your life at the time, because that stuff is really interesting.
Well, you know, I was always interested in Aldo Ray, even when I lived in Florida. I wanted to make features in Florida, you know, when I was just getting started. I was interested in Aldo Ray because he had been a big star, but now I knew just from, you know, watching independent films that he was more or less available to the low-budget film guys. And he was in a movie for a guy named Larry Foldis. And I think it was called Don't Go in the Park, or I don't know what it was. But even I was working for Channel 24 or Channel 35 at this time in Orlando. I was getting ready. I was going to do a movie like, I think it was Alien Dead. At the time it was called It Fell from the Sky. I was working at the TV station and I was thinking about Aldo Ray. And this is not in the book, but I found Larry Foldis. I looked around and it wasn't as easy back then as it is today. I found Larry Foldis finally, and I got him on the phone from the station, from the TV station. And he wanted to sell me Aldo Ray's phone number for $1,000. And I said, I couldn't believe, you know, because I was thinking one filmmaker to another filmmaker. I said, you got to be kidding me. And I hung up. And I thought, I don't ever want to be Larry Foldis. I don't ever want to be like that guy. I mean, it wasn't, but I don't know if it was one movie later that Larry Foldis never appeared again. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And then I finally saw some of his movies and I understood why. But I was always interested in Aldo, and he never left my mind. And once we got to Los Angeles, obviously my career didn't take off for a while. But once it started, I ran into a guy named Ben. I can't think of his name, but his name was Ben something, and he was a friend of Ken Hartford's, who is in the book. And Ben was a guy who helped Aldo around. He didn't have a car. He didn't have any money. And he was living at the Olive Inn or something on Olive, where Frank's Coffee Shop probably still is. This guy introduced us to him there. It was a handful to know Aldo. Hard to believe he was married to Joanna Ray, one of the top casting directors in all of Hollywood. And as you know, the book kind of outlines the tumultuous and sometimes combative relationship that I had with Aldo. But, you know, it's funny. I drove him one time. This is not in the book. I drove him down to a cable access TV show with a guy named, and his middle initial was E, Skip E. Lowe. Skip E. Lowe. And I think if you go on YouTube, you can see this show. Aldo was on the Skip E. Lowe show as an interview. And I took Aldo down there and waited for him. And so to be on this guy's show. And this is just during the period of time when I was working with him. And then years later, I brought Aldo out because I was a person who would, if I saw something like a set standing and they were going to tear it down tomorrow, I would try to run in tonight. I didn't have a movie. I would write something and shoot it, hoping that I could make a movie, come out of it later. and they had made that set for Deep Space for one night only. They made a laboratory set to kind of screw up the movie after the fact with some scientists or something the Israelis wanted to make this scene to make it into a biological weapon, which it wasn't in the movie. It was just an alien. And so for one night, we had James Booth and Norman Burton and a bunch of other actors try to explain that it was some government weapon. And it was a $10,000 set built for a one-night shoot or one-day shoot. And they were going to tear it down. And it was unbelievable. And I said, I can't do it. It's $10,000. So Aldo was in town. I said, here's $1,000. Let's go get him and let's bring him down tonight. We'll shoot 7 pages with Richard Harrison and Jay Richardson, Dawn Wildsmith, and Aldo Ray. And I shot the opening of a movie that would be a remake of The Indestructible Man with Lon Chaney, where Aldo submits to some experiment. And if he lives, he can walk free. And if he dies, well, he was going to go to the chair. And he dies. And then, because he was never reliable to show up again, I thought he would be drunk or on a bender. So I thought, okay, he dies in the opening scene. Then I make a mask that looks like Aldo, but burned up. And we get a stuntman to play him for the rest of the movie. And I filmed it. And then sure enough, he went on a bender. I never saw him again the rest of my life. And then he died. And I had the footage and I cut the scene, but everybody was so tired and it was so loopy and everybody was drinking after the wrap of this movie. It came out almost like a comedy. And we never filmed the rest of it. It's the only movie I think I ever shot extra scene for that I didn't actually finish and make the movie. But, there's still time. I'm still alive. So,
yep.
But there's a chance.
The transfer of Biohazard that's on Tubi is the remastered edition with the bloopers at the end.
Yes.
I don't want to spoil it for the viewers who haven't watched the film yet, but Aldo does forget his lines quite a few times, and you're quite stern with him. And I could hear, you get budget, money, time.
You only got so much time. And there was a guy playing who was wearing a white lab coat. He was so bad that we finally just stopped shooting the off-camera dialogue. And we would have him do one line, and then we would read him his next line, and he would just repeat it. Then we would read him his next line, and he would just repeat it. We stopped feeding him the off-camera other actor's line because it was just, we're not going to get through it. So we would say, if his line was, and over here we have this, and then we would just say, and over here we have this, and he would just say it again. And because, we were renting Roger Corman's studios. Those were the sets from a movie with Vince Edwards called Space Raiders.
Oh,
And so we only, Roger, he liked me, but he didn't like me that much. So we were getting a pretty good price to use the Space Raiders. Some of them were from a movie called Android with Klaus Kinski. And so we were under the gun, trying to get these scenes done on the weekend and get out of there. And you got Aldo, who's on who's hungover, and you have this guy who can't remember his own name. And so it was tough, you know what I mean? And we're shooting on short end, so we're rolling out every 20, 30 seconds.
Right.
So it was, it was what it was. But we were shooting in 35 millimeters, so that was a first for us. And we had a Panavision camera that Panavision owned us, and so we were feeling pretty cocky. But we weren't going to get too big an ego with things going down the way they were,
That was fascinating to me because when I watched those bloopers over the end credits, I was like, this is like having insight into the making of the film, because I could hear you prompting the actors just so you could get an edit in. You were like, say it again. Because I was like, oh, he didn't stop rolling because he can just cut it and like use the good take.
It takes a while to get rolling again and then slating again and get them in their spot again. And what you learn is that every time you stop the camera, a makeup person wants to run in and touch them up again. They're called last looks. And the actor wants a last look. Every time the camera stops, the girl wants them to look at her again. So if you don't stop the camera, they don't run in. So you're better off to not stop if you don't have to. And there was a movie about World War II. Maybe it was called Empire of the Sun. And the little kid in the film could tell how bad the war was going, but how many weevils there were in the rice. How many bugs were in the rice each day. Could tell him how bad the war was going for the Japanese. You can tell how Biohazard was going by looking at the slate in the end credit bloopers. It starts out and you see a beautiful slate. Then it was a little crappier. By the time you got to one point, it's a piece of cardboard off the ground and 2 sticks we found laying in the dirt. They're 2 rough pieces of board at one point and a hand-drawn slate with some tape holding it together. So you can just see how the film was disintegrating from having money to now we're holding the slate together with some cardboard and some tape, and you can see how the war is going by looking at the slate, and you can look at the date, and you can see how here we are, and it's 1983. Now it's disintegrated. It's 1984, 8 months later, and now we're Now we're in late 84, and things are more desperate. And you can see how desperate the movie is by the condition of what we're trying to use as a slate to sync the sound up, how bad things are going, or how broke we are, really, as you watch the slate devolve during the course of the bloopers.
How long did it take altogether to shoot that film?
I don't think anybody knows. When we first started, we thought we had financing from this company, and we shot eight days, and then the money never came. And we had one guy who was paying our lab bill, and he was steady. But the crew was being paid by another guy, this Ken Hartford guy. And after 8 days, he disappeared. And now I have this crew and all these actors, and they're like looking at me, and this guy has disappeared. And fortunately, they didn't kill me. So I went on this search trying to find the money. Thank goodness this other guy who was a friend of mine was covering the lab. So Ken Hartford could not take the negative. So the negative was protected. So I went out looking for the money. Unfortunately, I ended up having to go to 21st Century, who had done scalps with us, to get the finishing funds. But once I got the finishing funds, then I went back at it, and I was able to get Aldo Ray and pay Angelique Pettyjohn and all these other people and get everybody caught up and finish making the film. But that was it was probably 8 months later, because Chris had pretty much started to really outgrow the monster suit. We were having to cut the suit up the back and put extensions in it, because he would put the legs on separately and put the arms on separately, and it was in pieces, and he wasn't fitting in it anymore. And there was only so much baby powder you could pour on that kid to try to get these pieces on. But it did get finished. And, like I said, it wasn't the greatest film, but it had a lot of stuff going on in it. It had a lot of good, a lot of ideas. Not a great plot, but a lot of ideas. Yeah. And a lot of, things dropping on the people's faces and people firing guns. And, it was at the height of the sort of VHS mania. And it led to The Tomb, which, of course, changed everything. So,
did Johnny Legend write the music for Biohazard?
No. The music,
I've read that, so I didn't know.
Well, the music was done by the same guys, Drew Newman and that other fellow who did Scalps. It was a great little score. Johnny Legend was a guy who was a friend of ours. Johnny, if you know him, he was the brother of Len Margulies. Len Margulies was married to Steve Barquette, and she was the star of the movie Aftermath. And then after her and Steve broke up, she became the wife of Andy Kaufman.
Oh.
And she was an editor, probably still a very famous editor. She was with Andy Kaufman until he passed away. And a fairly famous actress plays her in that movie, Man in the Moon. And that she's Johnny's sister. His name's actually Martin Margulies. That's Johnny's name. But he was a rockabilly performer, just kind of a crazy jack of all trades. But he had some great rockabilly music, and he's got some CDs, and I was very fond of his music. So I asked him if I could use a song from his album in the closing credits. And I used a song called Rockabilly Rumble, and I played it in the closing credits. And I used a song called Kick About Me, I think, by a guy named Jesse Hawkins, which is also a stage name. I'm trying to think of what the guy's real name is. He's credited in the film under his real name as a sound guy, but he was a protege of Donald G. Jackson, the guy who made Hell Comes to Frogtown. Yeah. And The Demon Lover, who was also a friend of mine, very strange character. Jesse Hawkins, Don had us use his 45, a song called Kick Around Me. I think that's what it is. And it's playing on the headphones when the girl's in the bathtub and the curtains are pulled open. That's in Don Jackson's house. And so it's the garage where Chris comes down upside down and grabs Richard Hinch. That's Donald G. Jackson. That's his house. And that's his garage. And Don's the guy. He's with me in the kitchen. And I said to Don, Don, we should probably say the word biohazard somewhere in this movie. So I've always been big about that. Same in Moon and Scorpio. I came on that movie to fix it after Gary Graver had already filmed it. They hired me to come in and revamp the movie because they didn't like it. I said, someone should say the title of the movie because I don't understand why it's called Moon and Scorpio. And I said to Don, we should say the word biohazard somewhere in this movie. So Don says, okay. And so Don and I are the paramedics, and we're trying to revive this bloody guy in the kitchen. And Don, I think it's Don that says, it's not me. And it was almost a joke. Don said, hey, don't touch that thing, biohazard. And then the guy stops breathing, and I tap Don on the shoulder. I go, hey. And we go, oh, and we start pumping the guy's heart. And this is back when we were so stupid. And I have this rule now because I'm so fucking old. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. I'm so old, I will not film at night anymore unless I absolutely have to. I used to film night scenes at night for real all night long, even if it was indoors. Now I would just black the windows. But back then, I'd really film at night, even if I didn't have to. I was too stupid to say, oh, hey, let's just put some black over the windows. But like when we were there on the floor and we're pumping that guy's heart and all that stuff, and that thing comes out of the container at the end, it's really 4 in the morning. It's really 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know why the hell we didn't think on Deep Space and these other movies, why it didn't occur to us just to black out the windows from the outside or black them from the inside and drop the curtains, which is what we would do now. No. We're there at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., filming all night because we were young and dumb and I guess boundless energy. But
Yeah.
yeah,
The method filmmaking.
well, the DPs would go, well, Fred, we'd like to put a little light out the window, get some moonlight coming in. This is Biohazard, for God's sake. You know, I wouldn't do that on a Lifetime movie now. Screw that. I don't do that shit.
There's so many great stories like this one in this book. I can't wait to see the new version of it. Oh, you've got the proof. Excellent.
Ooh.
I love the cover.
This was a proof until I decided I wanted a hyphen between hell and bent. And then I redid the cover.
I worked on an earlier version of this book. I was the editor, so thank you for hiring me.
You
Many
were,
thanks.
I could not have done it without you. And that's the truth.
Thank you.
Left
I really
to my own
appreciate it.
devices. It would have been the Biohazard of memoirs.
No, not at all. I think what I like about it and what a lot of readers will probably like about it is that it's not just stories like the ones you just told. It's about the Fred we don't see, the single dad who had Chris in the monster suit on the set.
Yes.
You know, and he came up right along with you. And you know, a lot of people don't know that.
I didn't want a book that said, and then I made this film. And then you go about, and then I made this film. Obviously I made this film. I made this book coming out of a two-time flatline hospital nightmare, waking up out of a coma on Christmas Eve. And then a few months later, considering how lucky I was just to be alive. Anybody who wanted to could write a book about the films I made, and it would write itself. I made so many films. If you wrote 2 pages about every film I ever made, you'd have yourself a pretty thick book. But as I was writing this, I realized, you know, there's a lot of people who want to be directors, who want to make films. And you kind of go and they struggle and they struggle. And they don't know how it goes and they don't know how it happens. And as I was going through there, you can see how you can go from, as I was originally going to call this, as you know, from the unemployment line to the Emmys. I stood in the unemployment line for the first time in my life when I went to California. I didn't know what it was like because in Orlando, I was a television engineer at a TV station, and I worked a second job in a video lab. And when I went to California, I had a 4-year-old child, no car, no wife, and I was in the unemployment line. And the unemployment office was on Magnolia Boulevard at Lancashire. And I was standing in the unemployment line, and in front of me was a guy. This was back when you had to have the walk of shame. You had to show up in person and stand in line with your paper in your hand. And I just standing there, because you're there for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I couldn't help but look over the shoulder of the guy in front of me. It was Wyatt Ordung, the director, writer of Monster from the Ocean Floor and Robot Monster.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh my God, it's Wyatt Ordung. I really wanted to say, oh my God, Mr. Ordung. And I thought, he's probably as embarrassed standing there as I am. I said, I think I'll let this one go. And where I was standing in the unemployment office on Magnolia at Lancashire, that building was torn down, and that's where the Television Academy is today. The same Television Academy that gave me an Emmy 3 years ago.
That's
and I said, that's how
awesome.
it works out. That's how it works out. And
Yeah.
I rode the bus and I ate hamburger helper without any hamburger in it, trying to feed a 4-year-old kid on unemployment benefits and working and telephone and working. And, you know, I showed up in Los Angeles having made nothing more than, as you know, the Alien Dead for $12,000, which at that point was a complete flop. Had not made a dime, had not made a sale, was sitting in the closet. I showed up in November of 1981. By November of 1983, Scalps was playing in theaters across America.
Hmm.
And it was in all of these theaters. And I was standing still at a factory machine for $7 an hour. And that's pathetic. But if you read this book, it will show you how I managed to get from here to here to here to here. And by 1985, I had a 100 theater opening in New York City.
Yeah.
I went to New York City and I had a poster in every subway. I had hundreds of posters and billboards and was playing in 100 theaters within 4 years of getting off the bus. So I think it's inspirational.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you really can go from near poverty to getting what you want.
And then there's the later period in the book where you do your wrestling. And Sam is also a wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Again, it's not for everybody. That's not for us. I watched The Dark Side of the Ring the other night, and I watched it because I saw Abdullah the Butcher. And I wrestle, if you can call wrestling Abdullah the Butcher wrestling. That was the longest 20 minutes of my life. And I mean, very little of it was in the ring. And I went out the ring. I went into the audience. I went out through this double doors into a parking lot, onto a car, back in. And if you've wrestled him or worked with him, however you want to view it, it was insane. And then the next thing I heard, a guy had gotten hepatitis C.
Yeah.
From a match with Abdullah.
Ooh.
And this was a few years after that. I mean, I wrestled him much earlier than that. But it sent me scrambling for my doctor. I mean, I didn't have that problem. It was an interesting. I don't address that in my book, but I do talk about working with him and Terry Funk and all those guys. And I saw a video of Honky Tonk Man the other night, and I lost to him the Halloween Havoc years ago, and I think I saw him the other night, and I said, this time I think I could take him. Now I could take him. I lost at Halloween Havoc, but
man,
in San Jose, but now I think I got him.
Terry Funk's a big guy to wrestle. I've only drank with him. I never got to wrestle him.
I spent a lot of time tag teaming with him, and I finally said I want to wrestle against him. So I did like a 3-way hardcore because I wanted the spinning toe hold.
Yeah.
I wanted all that. I'd always been on the good side. I wrestled Hector Guerrero and a bunch of other guys, Mondo Guerreros, and I can't think of the other guys. But the spinning toe hold wasn't shit. I could take that all day long. But he hit you. He was like, I think he was left-handed, and he hit you, but he never missed. 4 shots to the face in a row. And I said, do you think you could miss once? He never missed.
His brother trained me. Dory trained me. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, will you teach me how Terry throws such great punches? And he goes, well, if you make it for a couple of weeks, I'll teach you. Yeah. And he said to me, he's like, yeah, they're all real. He's like, just.
That's how he does it. They all connect. Every one of them connects.
He taught me how to do the uppercut too. And Dory was, he's in
the French uppercut.
Yeah, and he was like in his 70s when he taught me. He knocked me on my ass with it because Carino told me, he's like, ask him what it's like, and he'll teach it to you. And by teaching, I mean he just hit me with like 20 of them. And he's like, okay, now you figure it out. Okay.
Yeah. That was Terry's big thing. I mean, right in the middle of the match, I kind of said quietly, do you think you could miss once? But what are you going to do?
Yeah. It probably looked awesome though when you go back and watch it. You're like, wow, those punches are great.
I know.
Are any of those matches filmed or on home video or anything like that?
I had the later ones. I had some on tape. I put together for my kids because my kids weren't around or they were way too little when I was working. So later, when they became sort of like into Randy Orton and stuff, I put together 2 minutes of some stuff from later in California, and I think it's on YouTube. It says it's called Everything You Want to Know About Freddie Valentine in 2 minutes. And it's whatever tapes that we had from around 1990 to 1998. It's just a 2-minute clip with some music. And it's got some bits. It's got some bits with Abdullah and maybe some stuff with Terry and a guy called the Pitbull. And I don't remember who all's in there. Mondo Guerrero's and there's some barbed wire ring stuff, a lot of exploding stuff because that was the time when everything seemed to blow up. Mm-hmm. And I had an alligator in the ring one time and a rattlesnake, 2 rattlesnakes. And I said, that, you keep saying all the things you wouldn't do again. And the alligator I would do again. The rattlesnakes, the eastern diamondbacks, putting my hand in that cage. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I think that's the name of the chapter. What the hell was I thinking?
It is the name of the
I
chapter.
was the only one who would do it. And I was like, what was I thinking? And everything was okay until I saw the video later, and I saw this, the biggest of the boa constrictor sized eastern diamondback rattlesnake lunging at me in that cage. And I thought, what the fuck was I thinking? I mean, Jesus Christ. Oh, well. I saw 2 alligators in the backyard today. They're not like the one that was laying out there, the 9-footer. The 9-footer walked off. I don't know where the hell he went. But the other day I looked out there and I saw one. He couldn't have been 3 feet long. And then today I saw him again and I went, oh, there's that little 3-foot gator. The rain must have brought him. And I looked, oh, there was a second one with him. And he's like, tell your friends, right?
Yeah.
Tell your pals. Now there's 2 now there's 2 back there.
They're waiting for you, Fred.
You know what? They're pissed off because I smoked one about that size in my smoker out back about 6-7 months ago. I put a 7-pounder on the grill. And,
does it taste like chicken? Everyone says it tastes like chicken.
You know what? I actually smoked some barbecue, some short spare ribs, thinking that nobody here would eat the alligator. But the alligator tasted exactly like the barbecued ribs. It went 100% went. Everybody ate it. I didn't catch it or kill it. I bought it already dressed out, and I just put it in the smoker, and it was great. Everybody loved it. So when in Florida.
Yeah, you're no longer in Hollywood. You were hellbent for Hollywood, and now you're
Hollywood, Florida, maybe.
You know what? I was living in Hollywood, Florida, and that's one of the big places that flooded today. So I don't live there anymore. I moved over to the other coast. I was living over near Bill Griffey and Doug Hobart and I'm over in near Tampa. I grew up in this area. I made my early 8mm films in this area.
That William Griffey box set is probably one of my favorite box sets that I own.
I think I'm in that documentary about him, so I did get a copy of that.
Yeah.
And that Impulse DVD or Blu-ray they came out with lately, they have a copy of The Godmothers on there.
Yep.
Which was a tax shelter movie by a guy named, I think his name was Mike Viola. And it was a terrible movie. And we always talk about it every time I see Bill. I go over there and I take Bill and I take Doug and I take them out to lunch about every 3 months. And it was one of the worst films. It's probably the worst film Bill was ever involved in. It was a great copy. That's the way film fans are today. Terrible movie, but what a wonderful copy.
That's true. That's true.
Wonderful copy.
Did you ever meet Bob Emery?
Bob Emery's going to be at this Tampa Screams thing I'm going to be at in 2 weeks. He made some of my favorite movies. And I met Joe Wizicki years ago I tried to buy his movies, but he wouldn't sell them to me. Bob Emery made Ride in a Pink Car, one of my all-time favorite Florida-made films. It's shot down the road from me at a place called Rabonia. I keep telling people that Rabonia is just down the street from here, and they say, what's Rabonia? Even people who live here say, what's Rabonia? I said, Rabonia is not a town. It's where 2 roads cross, and there's usually at the time of Ride in a Pink Car with Glenn Corbett and Morgan Woodward and Big John Hamilton. It was made down here at Rabonia, which was just where one road crosses another, and there's a gas station, little store, and it's where they pick strawberries. And I don't know if you've heard of Ride in a Pink Car, but it was produced by John Carroll, who played Zorro, one of those 1940 serials, John Carroll. Zorro's Black Whip, I think it was called. But Glenn Corbett was a fairly big star, and he was in one of the big Star Trek episodes, and he was in the John Wayne movies. He was in the Star Trek episode where him and Sally Kellerman had the blue sparkling eyes, had the brain thing. But Glenn Corbett was in a bunch of John Wayne films. Bob Emery made this movie where this guy comes back to town and he's an ex-con and they're trying to kill him. He's a half-breed Indian or something. Anyway, but it was one movie that he steals a pink Cadillac and there's this car chase type movie. But Bob's still alive. Amazingly enough, I didn't know he was still around, but apparently he's going to be in 2 weeks. He'll be at this convention. I hope. So maybe I'll get to meet him. My dad did Fireball Jungle, which had John Russell and Lon Chaney. And I thought Bob Emery might have been involved in that. There was another guy named Rene Martinez, who was another Tampa filmmaker who made about 4 films. Most of them have been lost for time. He made 2 of them with Carol Connors, who played the nurse in Deep Throat. She had a small window of celebrity. Now she was, I think I told you, this is in the book. She hung around Biohazard. She was friends with Angelique Pettyjohn, and she was married to a guy named Joe Banana, and he had a band. I think it was called I hate to say it, was called the Joe Banana Experience or something. And we would show the cut scenes. We had a rough cut of the scenes of Biohazard. We would show them to potential investors, and Angelique would come to the screening at the lab. That's where we'd have them. And Carol, they would come with their tits hanging out. Which I said this, it felt very Ed Wood-like. These stars of the movie would come to the screening and try to influence these investors. And it never worked. It never worked. And Angelique would walk out of the screening, and the investors would go off. And she looked at me one time and she said, if I was ever meet Steven Spielberg, I would just drop down on my knees and give him a blowjob for all the great movies he's given the world. I said, I wish you felt that way about our investors. We might have the money to finish this movie right now. And Carol Connors and she made these movies in Tampa. She made one called Young, Rich, and Ripe, and it was a kidnapping movie. And she made one called Road of Death, which was a motorcycle movie. Fortunately, Something Weird Video put it out. They put it out on DVD. It's unwatchable, but they did find an old print of it and put it out. And it's all master shots. There's no editing in it. There's no cutaways or anything. I've not been able to sit through it. But this guy, Rene Martinez, he made about 3 movies, and they're all made in Tampa. And so I'm a big collector of movies made in Florida from that exploitation time. There was one with Claudia Jennings. Maybe Bob Emery made it.
Willie and Scratch?
Yes, I have a press book for it that has all the synopsises and ad mats and stuff. And
You
I've
don't
got
have a print, do you?
No, I wish somebody did.
It's
And I worked for Luke Moberly, if you know who he was. He had Cinema City in Davie, and he made a couple movies, but he made one movie that actually went somewhere. It was called Little Laura and Big John. And I think it might be on Tubi. It had Fabian and Karen Black.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I think
And it
I've seen
was
that.
Little Laura and Big John. And he made another one where he just finally decided he would star himself. And it was called Sweet Talker, The Devil with Wings. And it was about a flying televangelist who had a World War I biplane. And I've got a press book for that. And a guy finally came up with a mint 35 print on eBay. And I tried to buy it, but he wanted $5,000. And I said, listen, I'd like to have this, but only because I worked for this guy and I'd like it for historical. I said, and he says, oh no, it's so rare. I want $5,000 or $7,000. I offered him $2,000 for it, but he said, oh no. Well, somebody did buy it, and they did buy it for $5,000 or $7,000. So
I was trying to think
maybe
of the
we'll
other
see
Carol
it.
Connors
Yeah,
movie. I
hopefully.
know it was Sweet Savage with Aldo Ray.
Yeah,
that's
not
79.
That's not a lost movie.
No, but it's funny that she was in that too. Have you seen any of the movies shot at Pirates World that Barry Mahone did in Florida?
I don't think so, but my dad was out to lunch with him and Bill the other day.
Oh wow!
And he pulls out. I was at the original Waffle House. I know you don't need to know that, but he pulls out this little Zippo lighter sized magnifying glass, and it's a cover. And he pulls out the magnifying glass. And he's looking at the menu, and I said, "What does that say?" And he gives it to me. It says Barry Mann Productions.
Oh.
It's got to be 40 years old, and it's the day it was made. Because he used to work for Barry Mann.
Can you tell the viewers why you call Doug Hobart your dad?
Well, my father took a hike when I was young, and I knew Doug Hobart. And Doug Hobart picked up my dad's slack when I was a young troubled teenager and guided me on through my life. And he took me on when I was like a high schooler. And so he's been in that spot for me for most of my life. Till today. And I haven't seen my biological father, and I have no clue. But what was the movie you were talking about in Pirates World? Because I went to Pirates World and saw Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh man!
Oh my God!
There is
72.
There's the Santa Claus Meets the Ice Cream Bunny was shot there.
Yep.
Oh.
And so was there's another one that is like a concert one that captures a lot of local bands, and Iron Butterfly's in it for about 30 minutes.
Playing one song.
Yeah, playing one song. Yeah. And then I saw a documentary about it because they even had a kids TV station, WKID, that was supposed to be like a kid-friendly show. But as you know, as Pirates World went on, it became more about the concerts and less about the park. And then the neighborhood started worrying about drugs and stuff that would come in from the kids coming to see shows.
I saw wrestling there in 1970.
Oh, wow.
I went to professional wrestling under the big tarp where the concerts and stuff were.
Wow.
And I was on the MT Graves show. There was a television station based out of Pirates World, Channel 50 something. And I was on the MT Graves horror TV show.
Wow.
72. It's funny because I went to get there Dad's birthday a couple weeks ago. He's 97. So I went down there to get him and Griffey because Griffey's birthday was the week before, and he's 94. So I picked them both up. And I refused to take him to the Waffle House, the Pancake House. No, it's your birthday, Jesus Christ! So they finally agreed to let me take him to Smoky Bones Barbecue.
I love Smoky Bones.
So, but I'll go over there, and it's been a long drive across Alligator Alley. I said I gotta go. I'm going to use the restroom. I go in there, and above the toilet is a mini poster for Barely Proper. And I look at it and I go, only here is there a mini poster for Barely Proper, the nudist colony movie, Brad Grinter's crowning achievement. And I'm watching Star Trek. We've been watching the original Star Trek DVDs here with the original effects in them. That's the way I want to watch them. And there was one the other night with Richard Webb. And I said, Richard Webb, he's in Barely Proper, this nudist colony movie, because his wife, I think, was Heather Hughes. I could be completely wrong. But Heather Hughes, I think, was Brad Grinter's wife. And Richard Webb was Brad Grinter, the guy who made Flesh Feast. Heather Hughes was Brad Grinter's sister or something. Fact check me. Richard Webb was Brad Grinter's brother-in-law. And they made this nudist colony movie. Are you with me on this? You got what I'm talking about?
100%. Yeah.
There's a Camp Sunshine or whatever there in Davie. And they put on this play. And you could go there with your clothes on and you could watch this play. And they were all naked. So then Brad who was a nudist. Brad Grinter was a nudist colony hangout. So they get the idea that they're going to film the play. It's called Barely Proper, and they're going to make a movie out of it. So Brad makes a movie of the play Barely Proper, and Doug is the promotional guy. And it plays midnight shows and only on weekends and all this stuff. And then that's how he has this press book hanging in his bathroom. And Richard Webb is in the movie because he's Brad's brother-in-law. So I said, I was saying to the young lady I was with, Richard Webb is in this nudist colony movie with the poster hanging over Doug's toilet and the other day at his house. So I go on the IMDb. Well, Richard Webb doesn't have it on his IMDb. I'm like, well, isn't that funny? Well, Barely Proper is not on the IMDb. There's a movie that's not directed by Brad Grinter, starring Captain Video, Richard Webb. It's not on the IMDb. It doesn't appear on there at all. So maybe it's time for someone to put it on there.
You can add it.
I'd watch it.
Oh, I could. I have a wonderful press book for it.
Oh, man.
After I saw Blood Freak for the first time, I became obsessed with watching everything Brad Grinter did. Because
you know what I found the other day? I found my Steve Hawks autograph photo.
No.
Herschel, no.
You can have it, Jennifer.
Oh my God. That would be
when I was a young man, Steve Hawks appeared at the Plantation Theater with his 2 lion cubs.
Yeah.
And he's starring in his own movie, Lord of the Jungle. Do you know he made his own Tarzan movie?
He did.
And he was all scarred because his lions had clawed him up so badly over the time of having him. And everybody knew him. Rusty Hobart knew him. Doug knew him. Everybody knew Steve Hawks. And he had these, they weren't even real photos. They were like printed on offset printing in light yellow paper. Picture of him with a knife. He was showing his own movie in this theater.
Wow.
Same theater where Ray Steckler had just been with his Mad Mummy doing the Lemon Grove Kids Meet the Monsters and running through the theater in a mummy costume.
Oh, that's amazing.
Only in Florida, baby. They actually went to the Davie Drive-In wearing a Mad Dog Click mask running between the cars for the killers or something.
Yeah, Sam and I were talking about that not too long ago. It's just, can you imagine being, what was it you said, Sam, about imagine being a worker at that cinema, getting the mask and going, here, you have to put this on and run around.
Have fun.
All right.
I went to the one with the Mad Mummy. I went to the Lemon Grove Kids Meet the Monsters where the mummy ran through the audience.
Oh, that's amazing.
Those were the days.
You don't see that shit anymore, you know?
It's film going experiences come down a lot.
Yeah.
Now you look if they don't actually shoot you with a real gun. See, people run for their lives for real during the Tingler.
So I'm gonna ask Bill and Sam, what's your favorite Fred Olen Ray movie? Do you have a favorite?
Alien Dead or Scalps? They're like neck and neck.
Mm-hmm. I like this one. This is my favorite.
That's one of my favorites because it's everything I actually lived through in the early 1970s. You know
exactly, and I love all the little
mosquito repellent in the car, and then having it blow up on you and fill the car with smoke where you can't see yourself.
That was my childhood too, and I love the little fake films that are being shown at the drive-in.
You know what I liked in that was all the people who came out all the filmmakers from my drive-in days who came out and sat in the cars and shot the little vignettes. You know, all the different people who I grew up with watching on the screen, or who were directors that I admired growing up, who showed up that night and sat in those cars and did little vignette jokes about their movies. I mean, there were the guys who made movies with Ed Wood.
Yeah.
You know, the guy, you know, who made Night of the Ghouls and Beast of Yucca Flats, and you know, guys who made Wizard of Mars and Dr. Terror's Gallery of Horrors, and, you know, the people from My Three Sons, and just the bizarre groups of people that came out and sat in those different cars and did all those little gags. And
yeah, there's a lot of little, like,
Dave Friedman.
Just little meta things in there that it was kind of way ahead of its time. Like, movies do that now on purpose, but you did it on purpose, but nobody did that back then.
No, you'd lose your shirt today. You'd lose all of your money today if you made that film today.
Yeah.
You'd lose everything. You'd lose you'd go broke, you know, because it's a different world today.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I had a long talk with Dave Dakota the other night, because I hadn't heard from him in a while. But I was watching Creepazoids because it was just there on Tubi, right? So I looked at it, and I texted Dave, and I said, Dave, watching Creepazoids right now. And for whatever reason, it prompted him to call me. And I said, Dave, you know what we should do? I said, we should issue a huge press release saying that we are going to become the Nicholson and Arkoff of our time. And I said, let's revive, I said, it's all bullshit. We'll just make it up. We're going to say that we're going to revive Dimension Pictures. And let's issue a bullshit slate of films that we have no intention of making, but we're going to say that we're going to bring the drive-in back now, just as it was in the 70s. I said, I'm going to make Cheerleaders in Cages, and I'm going to announce a bunch of bullshit films that we're never going to make. I said, let's issue this huge press release, and we're going to fund a whole new slate of new filmmakers and all this stuff, and we're going to reinvigorate the drive-in as a streaming service. And I said, let's see how far we can make this go.
I'm sold. I'm already sold. So I mean, it's going. Yeah,
I'm going to call my broker right after this.
Yeah.
I said, we'll do Cheerleader Hunt, which is the most dangerous game, where they lure this cheerleading squad to this island with this calendar shoot for their high school, and then they capture them, and businessmen have paid money to come there and then set them loose and hunt them with high-powered rifles.
You sold me again. Yep.
Sam, what's your favorite?
Oh man, Phantom Empire is number one.
I like that. 1930 serial.
Yep, that's what I love. And Sybil Danning, obviously, I'm easy. And I really like Evil Toons a lot. That's one of the first movies I rented, and I watched it a whole bunch of times. I perhaps was too young when I got it, but yeah, I love it.
Well, I went all over town trying to get that made. I was looking for $250,000, and Roger said, "I don't think you can do it for that." Mm-hmm. And I said, "I think I can," and nobody would do it. I tacked, as you know, Jennifer, we tacked it onto the end of another movie that we shot 2 or 3 days of pickups on someone else's film, and then we just rented the cameras for the whole week for their film, kept the cameras, and just kept going. Did it for $140,000, and that was SAG, Screen Actors Guild, 35 millimeter, couple name stars, pulled it off for $140,000. The movie that we went in there to fix, which had a much bigger budget, nobody ever heard of it again. Betsy Russell, Vince Van Patten, bye-bye.
The box art's what got me, because it was so cool with like the cartoons on the cover, and it just stood out on the shelf. And
Very Warner Brothers, yeah.
And I just remember being so excited about it when it came out. I was like, this movie's great.
I'm going to Skyline Drive-In in Indiana in October, and they're showing that.
Oh wow!
They're on the big screen.
That's awesome.
In Hollywood Chainsaw.
Perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
It's hard to pick one or two though, so I could probably think of 5 or 6 others.
I keep thinking of Evil Spawn now since I made my decision. So I'm like,
I like Star Slammer. I like it more because of the story about how you built the sets. Because now I watch it and go, oh yeah, those are the egg cartons, and there's the palette, and you totally don't see it if you're not looking for it because it's lit so well.
I used to just pick stuff up off the side of the road. If I could fit it in my car and it looked cool, I just stop. I used to go by when I was working the machinery at that lab for $7 an hour. I would have breakfast every morning at Hollywood, not Hollywood and Vine, but at Vine and whatever, Cahuenga, the next road over. And they would throw their egg flats, those cardboard flats that would hold 24 eggs. They would stack them and tie them with a ribbon and just throw them by the dumpster, And I'd go by and I'd say, oh, they've tied them up so neatly. And I would just pick them up, put them in the trunk of the car. And you didn't have to paint them because they were gray already or dark navy blue. You just glue them on the wall, you know. 1 egg flat looks like an egg flat. 24 egg flats looks like a modular spaceship, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They did that in Alien. For you know, a big budget movie like Alien, there were egg cartons in that, and I think Big Mac containers, those styrofoam things.
Yeah, one Big Mac tray looks like a hamburger tray, but 100 or so of them in a row. It looks like a modular spaceship.
Yeah.
Once you start looking at them, though, it does kind of fall apart. I think the worst got in Cyber Zone, the spaceship. They were using hot dog trays, and they didn't have enough of them, and they really look like hot dog trays.
Well, thank you so much for taking so much of your time out for the show. Highly appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciated.
Many thanks.
Don't forget to watch my Christmas movies. I want people to know. So people come and they say, "Oh, are you ever going to make another film?" I make films all the time. I make every year. You're watching the wrong channel. I saw that one of my actresses was up for an Emmy for the last film I made. I was very happy for her. And she's up now. I have a brand new film coming up this Christmas. It's called A Royal Christmas Ballet. I had to create my own ballet. And if you think that's not an achievement, I know nothing about ballet. I had to hire my own ballet troupe. I had to find a theater. I had to find the music. And then you think about trying to cover and create a ballet and cover a ballet with a couple cameras, I mean, on a budget. That's something. I make movies every year. You just have to look for them in the right places. And some of them are very much like horror films. Go on Tubi. Look for Deadly Shores, which is my lighthouse movie, the movie I waited all my life to make. Or look for Stage Fright, which is my Phantom of the Opera movie. These movies are out there, and they're some of my favorites. So please have a look.
I like Glass Trap a lot. I thought that was fun.
I hated that when I made it because they were supposed to replace these plastic ants I was using with CGI ants, and they looked at them and they went, "Oh, let's just save the money. These look fine." I went, "Oh no, what are you doing?" And then I saw the movie recently, and I went, "You know what? Those practical ants look pretty good."
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
It's a foreground miniatures with a giant egg pile over an SUV in an underground parking garage where Andrew Prine comes down. And I used gnocchi, which is a potato dumpling that I got in a grocery store the night before, and an SUV toy that I also bought in the grocery store. And I just put it in front of the camera, the toy, and poured the gnocchi on top of it, and poured some KY jelly on top of it. And I had the actor in the background shine a flashlight, and I took a little teeny pin light mag light, and I watched the actor, and as he shone his flashlight at the miniature, I shined my little flashlight on the miniature from off camera to try to match his flashlight. And you know what? It looked pretty good.
It did look good.
And just $20 special effect, all done on camera.
That may have been why I was so hungry after watching it. I was hungry.
That's
I'll watch anything that Andrew Prine is in. You know, if you guys know. Yep. It doesn't matter. I'll watch it if Prine is in it.
Yeah, it was good. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. And shout out to Hound for the Holidays, was it? With the
Dog Nap.
Dog Napped. Yeah, that was a good one. I did like that Christmas movie.
No, that was another good one.
My mom saw that one and she really liked it. So
that was one of the few Christmas movies with a knockdown, drag out fight.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell happened there.
The thing about those Christmas movies is they're all shot in Buffalo, which
that
is
was shot in LA.
Oh, that one was shot in LA. All right. Okay.
It's in the same bar that Piranha Women was shot in.
Oh, wow.
My Charlie Band movie. So there you go.
Under 17 not admitted without parents or guardian. Under 17 not admitted without parents or guardian.